Oh my gosh. Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm going to work with this lighting just for a second. Give me just a second. It's because I have to wear my glasses. Ooh, that's bright. Bright, 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 bright. Let me see if I can turn it to make it where it's not as bad. Let me go this way. Just give me just a few more seconds and let me see if I can't get this thing up and going. That's a little bit dark, but we're going to attempt to try it out. I know that when I don't wear my glasses, it's always better. Then I can just modify. Okay. If anybody can hear me, just comment in the comments saying, yeah, I can hear you. It's just a way where I want to be able to make sure that this is actually working. So anyways, hi, everybody. I am Sunshine-ANDIE, and I am here because I have a real calling on my life to talk about mental health, mental illness, and mental awareness. And now I got to put my glasses on. It's something that a lot of people don't want to talk about. And it's always something that what I have found in my 45 years of being on this planet is that when somebody else addresses it, it's a little bit easier of a subject to dive into, to talk about, to share feelings, thoughts, emotions, opinions. And that's why I'm here. So one of the things, I'll tell you a little bit about me, my story. It's nothing that is fancy by any means. I'm just a normal, Texas girl, born and raised right here in Texas. And I came from a big family on both sides. And my parents, they split up when I was young. And it took a pretty big toll on me. And I had two major different relationships with both parents. And I had a lot of childhood drama and a lot of childhood trauma from the drama that I had to witness as a child. And it affected me in the choices I made as I got up into adolescent age, as well as a young adult. It almost defeated the purpose of, having the want to be at my 110% all the time. And it took me years and years of finally coming to the realization that I have mental illness. And I'm here to let you know that this is going to be a YouTube channel where we can share, we can come together, and we can go on this journey together. I'm here to listen. I'm here to help. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not here to gain access to your personal information. This is strictly based on me sharing my tools and steps and actions that I took to overcome, how to change my thought process, how those actions, the tools and steps that I did for that, how it's still developing with that. It's a day by day. It's not, you're not going to get it all right in, a few months. It's something that you have to incorporate, just like a diet. just like a lifestyle change, you have to want a lifestyle change with mental health and how to cope with it. Come to realize that you have it is the first step. And then after that, it's more or less, what am I going to do? How can I, how can I live with this? Because it's never going to go away. It is an illness that is not cured by medicine alone. You have to constantly work at it, just like with fitness, for example. You want to be in shape, have, great health, not be overweight, not, have diseases from being overweight. You want to be in shape, you want to be healthy. You have to take the steps, the actions to do it. And it's the same with wanting a healthy mind, a healthy thought process. You have to take the actions and the steps to want to do it. I personally have done a lot of one-on-one therapy over the years, having therapists, but I always reverted back to my old habits, back to my old ways, because I got lazy. And that's just the honest truth. The one thing that I will share with you guys is that this is going to be a channel where you can come and you can just listen, or you can come make a comment. But I ask that you be respectful to not only myself as the host, but any guests that I bring on. I also ask that you be very respectful to positive comments, because we talk a lot about negative thoughts and negative energies around us. That is a part of mental illness. A part of our mental awareness is recognizing that there could be negative energies, negative, of course, negative thoughts that are crossing through our mind constantly, and how we're having to battle it and cope with it. I am just one person that has enough years under my belt, I guess you could say, of being aware that I have mental illness, and I take steps in order to cope with it. And I know now, at the age of 45, that there is no cure. It's just that there are steps, resources, and decisions that we can make as human beings to actually live with it and maintain it and grow, and just recognize the signs and the symptoms, and how we can also share our experiences, share our mistakes, share our successes with other people when they struggle and they don't know how to handle it and they don't know what to do. I've been there. The first time I recognized that I had a problem was when I started having nightmares at a young age. And it was, due to a lot of mental and physical violence in my house. I was witnessing as, a child. And my parents fought a lot. And if you can relate, then, I'd like for you to listen for a few minutes longer. But it started with my childhood. I figured out the age frame. It was about 7 years old when it started with me. I started recognizing that something was wrong with my mind, and that I was experiencing bad thoughts, bad feelings, uneasy feelings, and I was witnessing major mental abuse, mental emotional, not just mental, but emotional abuse between two parents. They were doing it at each other and in front of all of us kids. And I come from a big family, but growing up, there was just mainly four of us in the house, and I'm the youngest. And we grew up with violence and screaming and yelling, and we grew up with the parents that didn't have a filter for their mouth, but then yet they would go to church twice a week, three times a week, and repent, but they would never repent for doing that in front of their children and how it could affect their children's lives. And I talk about this openly now because that's where it began. And my siblings and I, we witnessed just pure violence from, like I said, mental, emotional, and physical abuse. And they did it to each other. It wasn't like my father was physically abusive to my mother. That didn't happen. What it was is my mother had emotionally and mentally abused my father, and he would take it out on, other things like the wall or the door, or, uh, yell at us, as kids, things like that. But my dad never physically hit my mom, pushed her, shoved her, nothing like that. He was never physically violent with her, but there was violence in the home. There was dishes thrown. There was things, thrown at each other. And just, it was just, it wasn't like Hollywood would make it out to be on, a big movie of violence. It was just violence that we as kids recognized. And when I started recognizing it, the first thing I did was have a breakdown, and I didn't know who started it. Was it my dad? Was it my mom? Who, what started it? But here I am, and it was after school. And I remember it so clearly. It was after school one day. And I remember it. I had such a good day at school with my friends and my teachers and my homework, and I turned it in, and I was able to, we brought our favorite book to school, and I was able to get up and talk about the book that I really, really loved, and how it was inspiring, and I was able to talk in front of the class, and at 7 years old, I knew that I wasn't like most kids, because in the back of the room, most of the parents were there, because it was where the kids, they got to bring a favorite book to school, and it was in language arts, in second grade, just and I just remember that there was a lot of parents in the back, and they were standing, and they were filming and taking, pictures and everything like that. And I stood up and I talked about my book, knowing that, looking around, neither one of my parents were there. And in my thought process, I was sad and jealous of all the other kids. And I was so proud of myself for you know, being able to just get up there and talk in front of all these people, and they weren't there to witness it, and it was one of my proudest moments as a child, and I didn't have the support. And my parents did work growing up, but if they really took the time to be better parents, at least one of them would have been there. And so it affected me deeply. And I remember coming home, and I got on, the school bus. Or maybe it wasn't a school bus, but I got in I guess I got in the car with, and I just remember talking to my sister, who was just, a grade ahead of me. And I said I was really sad because, daddy and mom weren't there to hear, me talk about my book. And she said, well, she just gave me a negative response. She said, well, what do you expect? Look at who they are. And that just kind of struck me like, what? What do you mean who they are? And from that point on, I started trying to figure out who they were. Because, my 9-year-old sister already figured it out. And now I'm having to. And what a struggle that was. And it gave me nightmares immediately. It just something clicked in me. And then when I started witnessing more and more as I got older, between the ages of 7 and 13, I was walking on eggshells for all those years because I didn't ever want to upset either one of them, but especially my mother. I didn't want to upset her because she was, for the girls, she was the disciplinarian, and she was strict. She was hard on us, but she did give us love and affection. I just thought she did it in the wrong way. We were spanked as a child, and my personal opinion, I didn't have a problem getting spanked as a child. That wasn't the issue. But don't spank me and then hug me after and say, I love you, and I did it for your own good. I just think that that's really sick psychological, things you can tell your kids. If I did something wrong, I always thought, if I'm going to get a spanking, it's because I did something really bad, really wrong. But if I didn't, put away the dishes right after I came home from school because I was too busy, doing my homework, cleaning up, after my dog, things like that, then it was where I didn't, I guess, think that was the highest priority. So my mother would walk in from work, and I'm just a little kid. And at that time, in those days, me and my sisters, it was either my older sister, who's 7 years older than me, which if I was 7, she was 14. My brother was 15. So we all kind of juggled back and forth. But there were plenty of times where me and my sister, who was only 8, 9, and I was 7, were there by ourselves for an hour or two after school, no adult supervision. And my older siblings that were young teenagers in middle school and high school would come in. I'll see you later. And they would tell me, hey, I'll be here, but I'm going to be in the back with my friends. Or, hey, if you're, whenever you're ready, I'll make you something to eat, or, things like that. They would never come in and ask me how my day was. We were not a family that talked about emotions and talked about how our day was. It was never a positive thing. So my mother coming home and she's exhausted from work, she didn't want to have to deal with children. She wanted to make sure that her house was spotless and clean when she got home. And if it wasn't, we would get the raft from that anger. And so that was the age also where I developed a really bad OCD illness. And I say illness because I didn't want my mom to come home and the house wouldn't be clean. And I felt at that time, at that young age, that if I didn't have the house clean when I got home, she would yell at me and I would cry. And then she would never apologize. And I always thought, how dare you, And then here I am apologizing to her for her house wasn't clean. Do you see where I'm going with this? It's a psychological, manipulation that my parents had a real bad effect on my mental health. They psychologically manipulated, all of us, but I'm only going to speak for myself because, I don't have permission to speak on behalf of my siblings. But I will tell you that it wasn't fair. It was unjust. It was very hypocritical in my house. And I was always ready to get out and go play with my friends in the neighborhood. The minute I got home, I just remember, okay, I'm going to walk in. I just remember in my mind, getting out of school, I just remembered that fear coming up in my gut. My hands would be shaking and I would be like, okay, I got things to do, and at that young age, it's not about enjoying being a kid. It was, I have to do whatever it took for my mother not to yell and scream and go ballistic and throw shit and take away privileges and take away my, my records out of my room or take any of my posters off my walls. Cause she would get in those rages where I would have really cool posters on my walls of bands that I love or an actor or, like for instance, I had a huge poster of The Breakfast Club, all the actors and when it appeared and everything like that. And I was so young, but I loved that movie. My older sister and her friends took me to see that movie. And I just love that movie so much. And, and so it was one of those where I became kind of, a big fan of those teenage, Hollywood stars back in the 80s. And Molly Ringwald was one of mine. And then when she did 16 Candles and her name in the movie was Andie, I was like blown away. And I got to see, that movie live at the picture show too. And I just remember saving all my babysitting money from the neighborhood, young couple down the street. And I was, I don't know, I guess I was 11 at that time when I just remember it being such a big thing to go see those movies, and to watch them live and everything like that. And it was just to go to the cinema was a big deal, and, but I remember going back just because I'm rambling and I know I'm rambling because I'm already 24 minutes into it. this is basically a station channel, YouTube channel, where you can come on, you can make a comment, you can say, I just ask for respect. I ask for, positivity. I ask for questions, of course, if I can help with anything. If I don't know the answer, I definitely will get the answer for you. But I wanted to just let you know that it came to my attention at a very young age that I had mental illness. But it took, from the age of 7 all the way to about the age of 30, I want to say. I was right at 30 when I started doing something about it. And then I was more aware at that age. And I had a really good therapist that took me through the steps of when it started. When did the pain start? And that's what I'm going to share with you guys in my YouTube pages, my YouTube streaming live streams, or if I record, I'll post it. You guys, I'll try to answer as much as I can, but I'm not a psychologist. My background is medical massage sports therapy, and I did it for 24 years. And I had a lot of side hustle gigs with it along the way. But I did master in massage therapy, and I am retired now because I have arthritis in my hands, and so it's one of those where I can't do 8 to 10, patients a day. But getting back to the channel, this is going to be a safe zone for where you can, email me, you can talk to me, we can chat, where I want to be able to talk to real people that are struggling. And I want to be able to share with you the steps, the tools, and the resources that I did that has helped me be a better version of Sunshine. Okay. A better version of Andie. And if you guys want to know that, those two names go together because they're both my nicknames. I've never really gone by my real name because I just, as a kid, I was Sunshine and Andie, and, Daddy called me Sunshine. My whole family called me Andie. To this day, my whole family calls me Andie. But then my friends started calling me Sunshine. And then as I got older, people just call me both. Sometimes they say it together. So that's why I have, Sunshine-Andie. You can call me either one. But I will respond to either one, either name. And come here, Emmy. I will tell you this come here. Come here. Come here. I know you don't want to get up. So one of the things I just want to share with you guys. Come here. Can you sit up? Sit up. This is Emmy. I want to share Emmy with you, okay? You're going to see her a lot on my channel. Emmy is a red heeler, Australian cattle dog. The vet says Kalahua, but she's a big old fatty is what she is. But she is my full-time emotional support, and she's also trained as a emotional support animal for senior living. So she gets to go to like an actual job, and she gets to pet and love on all the sweet and kind elderly that are in senior living homes. And she does that. And being a service animal, she's registered in the state of Texas, and she was trained by a wonderful human being who knows how to train dogs very well to not just protect, but also dogs are very, very good at recognizing emotion. So when you're crying, dogs will come to you and want to love on you. Dogs are the best creatures on the planet, I think. This is just my opinion. But she's very spoiled because she's a big fatty. She's like a big baby bear. She's about 90 pounds, and I have had her for, it'll be, well, it was 5 years last month. So I've had her for 5 years. And she has been with me through a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, a lot of things. I've pretty much been a single mom all my life, and I haven't been the best, because that was a learning curve for me too. Been divorced for almost 20 years now. Never wanted or felt the need to push myself into, marriage. I took marriage very seriously, but I just chose the wrong, people. And so, married way too young, real quick, married again, young, real quick, ended. Now I've had long-term relationships, but none of those guys got a wife out of it. They all ended due to 85% of it being there was a lot of mental abuse from both sides. And when you're a victim as a kid from mental illness and abuse in your home, from your parents, siblings, whoever you were with day in and day out, you can take that into adulthood. And that's the first thing that is a part of the awareness, as if 9 times out of 10, if you witnessed it as a child, it's a pattern. And in order for those patterns not to go into your adulthood, you have to break the pattern and be aware. That's why we as a society need to talk to our children, talk to our kids about mental health and mental illness, and to prevent them from going through what we went through and are still going through and still on the journey. I have 3 beautiful, wonderful children, but I've had my struggles with all 3 of them at different stages in their lives. And I know now that the best decision I ever did was to have them, because I had a choice with all 3 not to have them. They were all 3, all 3, were shockingly, unplanned. And, it was one of those where I just, I could have. There's nothing wrong with a woman making a choice. If she wants to choose to keep her baby or not, that's her choice. I am not against abortion. This is my personal opinion, even though I was raised, in a, Christian home, so to speak, where we were forced to go to church, twice, 3 times a week with our parents. We were brought up, saying this is wrong and all that, but I don't feel that it's wrong, because I do feel that it's a woman's choice. And if she's not ready, there are precautions, but we are advanced now in the medical field, where we have, of course, pill. And I think that was one of the best things that ever happened, to where it prevents, a woman not to have to go through that emotion of having an abortion. But I did like I said, being a mom was the greatest gift that I felt was given to me. And I, even though it was hard and financially hard and challenging with partners and with partners that didn't live with me, and going back and forth with kids, and, doing that for years, it was extremely hard. And, some when they lived with me, when they, were with their dad, just back and forth. And now that they're all grown, it's one of those where we have a different relationship. We have different relationships now because, I'm an empty nester and they have their own adult lives, and I'm so thankful that I was one that I wasn't the brightest or knew all the answers. They don't give you a manual, with being a parent. It's trial and error. And you just hope that you give more affection and love to your child and let them know that, hey, I make mistakes, but I love you so much. And I promise you that my love for you is never going to change. No matter how angry you may get at me, no matter how angry I may feel, whatever the situation is, my love for you will never, ever go away. That is permanent love. And so with that being said, going through a very rough upbringing, a childhood where my parents literally masked who they really were. And that's something that I noticed I was doing as a young adult. I would mask who I really was because I didn't want people to know that I had this illness, that I had these problems. I shoved it down. I avoided it. I swept it under the rug. I lied my ass off and protected myself from judgment and did not want to ever talk about it. So when you make friends and you ask about your childhood and you lie and you say, oh yeah, it was great. I did this, this, and this. But it wasn't great. And it wasn't a good childhood. And I personally didn't go through, I went through with my parents, mainly my mom. I had a really good, kind, understanding relationship with my father. But he had his own mental illness and it went back to his childhood. And my dad had real bad ADHD that he never got treatment for. He never sought help for his ADHD. So as a kid, my dad couldn't necessarily, he always constantly wanted change. And he, whether it was a job or a different place to live, we moved a lot as kids. And those patterns took me into my adulthood, the same type of patterns. So I figured out around the age of, I want to say 17, 18, that I had ADHD and I had the same type of mental illness. It's a real problem when you can't stay on task and focus and complete a task. It's a real problem because it makes it harder, and the circumstances that sit right in front of you, if they don't get solved, then they pile up, and then you get to the point where you are overwhelmed and you turn to, addictions that help you cope with being so overwhelmed because you have ADHD and you have OCD. And whenever I would get so bent, because I couldn't focus and I couldn't, and my parents wouldn't take me to the doctor. They wouldn't take me to a psychologist. That costs money. And that was something else that I, had expressed to my therapist, that if they would have only just noticed that I was struggling. You can't just give a kid a hug and think that they're going to be better, because they're not. If they would have noticed, if I would have spoke up. So, it's partially my fault as well. I still know the answer. I still know that they would say, "Oh, we can't do that. That's too much. Why don't you go talk to your school counselor?" And I did that a few times, but it did not help. And then they would say, "Well, go pray about it. Go read your Bible. Go to church, talk to your youth pastor, do this, do that." Well, those things can help for temporary solutions. There's nothing wrong with praying. There's nothing wrong with talking to people in your church that are in leadership. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. What it is that it was just kind of like putting a Band-Aid on it until you took a shower, and then that Band-Aid fell off and you had to deal with it again. And sometimes it was where the anxiety of it. So at a young age, I turned to drinking, smoking cigarettes, partying, being stupid, being foolish, making bad decisions, especially with alcohol. And it was just, I wanted to feel better. I wanted to feel better, and that was my drug of choice. And it took me on a roller coaster through my adulthood, and it didn't get bad. And I was more of a wine drinker. So I would stop and get, 2-3 bottles of wine and drink at home, make dinner for the kids, get them all tucked in, do all the chores, because it gave me a boost of energy. And then I would just, basically pass out wherever I was. Sometimes I'd wake up in my clothes. Sometimes I would, realize that, I needed to, I was going to have to be up in, an hour to get the kids off to school and ready. And I just remember that, they saw me drinking wine. They never questioned it, because I didn't grow up with parents that drank in the house. They didn't drink. My mother didn't drink at all. She didn't even drink coffee. But in a way, do I wish that she would have had something to help her cope with her anger? Absolutely. And I say that as clear as day, because we as adults now, me and my siblings, we look back and we were like, you know what? First of all, we're all glad that we're here and we got born, but man, they should have got divorced a long time ago, because those two people were so fucking toxic, and they just made it miserable for everybody around them. We couldn't even be at a family function without them going off on the side, having a fight, then having sex back when we got home for like 2 hours, and then everything be okay for one night, and then the next day it would happen again. So that was the realization that we had to like endure, as kids. You know, uh, we knew when the door was shut in the middle of the afternoon and it was locked that that's what they were doing, and that's how they coped, I guess, with the anger they had towards each other. And my dad, he left, I want to say, several times, and they split up several times, but it was more towards when I was in high school. And then I was, it was just me and my sister was the only one left in the house. And um, there was bits and pieces of my childhood that were really, really good and positive. Um, One of the things that helped me is getting into sports. So I got into tennis at a young age, and that helped me develop a skill. And I still had mental illness, the fear of nobody coming to watch, my practices, my matches. And that happened a lot. But then my dad would show up, and then he would come and watch. And then the one time, my brother showed up, and I was just shocked, that he showed up. My mom would, be that mom that she'd make sure I'd get to practice or get to the matches or whatever. But if it was out of town, there's no way she would take her time and go watch me. But my dad was really proud of me, and he did. He did several times, and tennis was something that it was an escape. It was the way I could get my anger out on the courts. And I got noticed, I got noticed in a big way, and it was exciting for me. And it was something I was really good at. And there were other things that I did, in school. I did drama, I did choir, the debate team, something that helped me develop more into public speaking and, things like that, things that I could talk about. I did a Bible study, that started in middle school, and, I went up to high school and stuff. It was, like I said, there was parts of the childhood that were okay, that were good, that I had good memories. But about probably 70% of my childhood was destructive chaos. Every day, we as children did not know how they would come home, what would happen, if there was going to be food, if there was going to be somebody there to, feed us. There was a lot of neglect, and I never was a victim of sexual abuse. I never was a victim of physical abuse, because that was one thing that I was very thankful for, because I have friends that were, and I know that there are a lot of people out there like you guys that are victims and have gone through that trauma in your childhood. And my heart goes out to you. It does, because I've heard and witnessed, even in my own family, my extended family, and, my extended family on both sides, my dad and my mom, both sides got, there was molestation going on. And it wasn't talked about back then. You just, you didn't talk about it. But my mom knew having 3 daughters and what she witnessed and went through as a child, she wanted to make sure that her 3 daughters were safe and protected. So at a very young age, I think I was 8 or 9, she pulled me to the side and we had the big talk about birds and the bees and all that. And then she talked about, inappropriate, touching and things like that. And she even, we had this code word. So if me and my sisters were somewhere, all we'd have to do is call her and say this code word, and then she would come right then. And I was thankful that she went to those, that she didn't want that for her kids, her daughters especially. My brothers were always really tough and fighting constantly. So I guess she as a mom didn't feel like she had to have that talk with my one brother that grew up in the house with me. But my other brothers that didn't grow up with me, they were really tough and everything. And so, but my father was a very good man and he was a hard worker. It's just that he was pushed to the point of, well, this amount of money is not good enough. You need to go out and make more. And that's what my mother did constantly to him. She constantly put him down. She constantly mentally would, tear him down. And he felt like he was never good enough. He felt like no matter what he did, if he worked 2 jobs, it was never good enough for her. And coming from, she was educated, he wasn't, and she was trying to mold him into something he never was going to be. He was always going to be just a blue collar guy that, mowed lawns and put roofs on. And, then later in life, after all that, he, drove a truck, so he never wanted to, but then she would push and push and push to the point of, he just finally, got sick of it. And, he decided that, well, I'm not going to be with this person anymore who's constantly tearing me down. And when men get to that point, there's 1 or 2 things that they do, or maybe they do both, but they will cheat to find a woman who is kind to them, who will give them what they're not getting at home, and they will keep it going, or they will leave, divorce, and then, immediately find somebody else, so they could juggle it, be having an affair, or they could, divorce and stuff like that. My dad, he chose to have multiple affairs on my mom and wouldn't divorce her. And we always, as kids, looking back, we wanted them to hurry up and get it over with because it was affecting our lives day in and day out. We had to hear the drama. And it was not good. It just wasn't. It was 2 parents that shouldn't have been married in the first place, but we were glad that we were born. But then they should have divorced because it took years, later for, for us to grow up, and all of us started having children and careers and things like that. And it took years for them to finally get along. And before they died, well, let me go back. I was 15 when they finally legally divorced, but then they would, keep screwing around with each other in between whatever, girlfriend and boyfriend. So if they would break up with a girlfriend and boyfriend, then they would hook up. And they did that for the rest of my remaining of my high school years, and it fucking sucked because I could never have friends over. I had friends over one time, and my dad was drunk off his ass, came over, hooked up with my mom. She was emotional wreck. My friends witnessed it. And then when I went back to school the next Monday, it was talked about all through high school. We're talking about high school. And it wasn't good. It was embarrassing because these were the type of girls that could tear your reputation apart. And I had my older sister. She was, 2 grades ahead of me. And I had to tell her what these girls were doing and saying. So she was like, well, I'll handle it, because the way she handled it was with violence. She was a scrapper. She fought all the time. Girls, all the time. I wasn't that way. I didn't want to be. I could have, but I didn't want to be. And so my older sister handled these girls. I mean, she handled them. And then they quit, eventually talking about me. But then it was like, okay, now I can't really trust anybody. I was starting to have trust issues. And then it was developing into trusting what my parents were saying. And then, the whole, for a couple of years, from like 6th grade, up through, I guess, my junior year of high school, we were able to stay in one house, one place. My parents bought it. And when they officially divorced, my mom thought it was the greatest idea to go move back to where we were living before, to be closer to my older sister who just had a baby. And that was her excuse. But years later, my mother told me the reason why we upped and moved in the middle of the year while I was still in high school was because she couldn't bear to be there alone without my dad. The memories haunted her, and it just took a toll on her mental illness, her mental health. And it took, for her to admit that trauma from that marriage on both sides, she finally, I want to say 3 years before she died, she admitted it to me that marriage she should have left a lot sooner, and that she was sorry that she put us through that. I mean, she specifically was talking about me. But because I was the last one out of the house, I had to stay with her the longest, and it sucked. We had a difficult relationship. And she, she was a mastermind at manipulation. And when I saw her get her way, even with us kids, she would make us feel so guilty if we didn't do for her. that we just, we had to go around keeping her reputation up, letting everybody know she's just the greatest mom in the world and how loving and kind she is. Because when we would enter into church, she was a totally different person. And if you guys know what I'm talking about, where your parents were one type of person in church and the other type at home behind closed doors, that was my parents to a T. They acted like the perfect Christian couple, raising their children in church and all this. And this is the 1980s and 90s, okay? So this was a different era. You didn't talk about your problems, and you certainly wouldn't go to your church pastor and or allow him to think that you had problems and that divorce, oh, hell no. You wouldn't dare go to your own pastor to seek counseling help. Not back then. They would have never done that. They would have never done that. They would have been shunned from their friends in the church, and they were there for, 18 years at one church. So they didn't seek counseling at all. They just swept it under the rug. And I know now that I was glad that I had, finally, after all those years, my mom apologizing for how she behaved, her part in it, and why it affected me so much. And she knew that it did, coming up in adolescence and in adulthood, why it affected me, and why I made the choices and did what I did, because I didn't want to be around her, because she was just chaotic, out of control, and wanted a man that didn't want her. He didn't. He got fed up and he moved on. And I just remember she used to be so desperate and call my dad at night and say, oh, I need this fixed, or just to get him to come over to the house. And it was just like a desperation. And I've never witnessed a woman being so desperate to get a man to notice her. And the fact that she did not want to move on from him, it was embarrassing to watch. She took it the hardest. She could not move on. And, there's family secrets that everybody has in their family. But they're both dead. And I'm talking about mine. And that's where I'm at, I'm sad that they died. But I'm thankful that I got the time that I did with them. Even though they weren't perfect. My dad, he was pretty close. He was an amazing father. Maybe not to each one of us, but I can only speak for myself. My dad did not judge anyone because he made mistakes too. And he did not want to come out and be a hypocrite like my mother was. My mother would not let me walk out of the house unless I looked a certain way and my hair was done and my makeup was perfect. And now I have tics to where I have to constantly mess with my hair and, redo it and constantly look in the mirror, make sure my makeup is perfect. It's because of those things, that mental manipulation that she did to me as a child, that now I do it to myself. I'm constantly making sure I look presentable, picture perfect, whatever, because she said that, you know, um, you want to, preserve what you still have, and what you have the most, Andie, is your beauty. She never wanted to point out that I was smart and that I had a brain. She just wanted to point out that I was a beautiful girl, and that's what I should focus on, to capture, to grab, to get a husband. We were not rich by any means. We were not on a poverty level, but we were kind of in between. We had our times where we had nice big Christmases, we had, gifts and everything. And then there was times where, we had to get food from the food bank at church. We went through different struggles because my dad, he only kept jobs for so long. Then he would either get fired or want to quit because it just wasn't working for him or whatever. And he did not want to, he didn't want to admit, that he had a problem with job hopping, I guess you can say. I'm still on my journey, just so y'all know. And that's basically, part of it, part of my story. But I have been sitting here talking to you for over an hour, and I know that that is exhausting. And but it's good to share. It's good to have a voice. And you can recognize, take the steps. That's what we're going to continue talking about. I'm going to make sure these videos are a lot shorter. Please don't harp on me for that. I'm just trying to get started again. I am working on a book series right now. It's a really fun project for me. My books are fictional, but the characters that I put into play in the storyline, it all has to do with mental illness. And it's going to be a great project, just to keep progressing and going. And I'm very excited about that. This is a new chapter in my life. I'm, switching careers from, full-time to, doing massage therapy and, having my client base and all that. And now doing, blogging, writing, sharing, being more available for, helping people that really need help. And just awareness, speaking out about awareness. And, and why our system, with the healthcare system, and why isn't, a lot of our healthcare, why don't we have near the coverage for mental health that we do for, regular checkups, regular health? We'll talk a little bit, touch a little bit about on that. I'll have guests on the show. I'll have, people where they're going to want to, we'll talk about different topics and keep them shorter and stuff. But guys, please tune in, pass it along, share it on Facebook, share it on, YouTube. Followers can, what's great is that you can share it to all your links. But like I said, I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a person who has discovered the source, where it started, and took the steps to start healing my mind again, start reversing. And I learned the tools and the steps and the proper way to change your subconscious, because we're wired one way due to the way we were brought up, our childhood, trauma, any type of abuse whatsoever. We are wired when those things happen. And so when we become an adult, we think a certain way, we act a certain way, we have behavior patterns a certain way. So I have now at 45 am discovering why, all my whys, and we'll talk about that. One of the other videos is find out what your whys are. Why did this happen? Why do I act like this? Why do I react like this? Why is my anger and passion the same amount for this person? All these things will come out, all these things that you talk about, that we could talk and share together. I want you guys to share your story with me if you're comfortable. Be anonymous names, and talk privately through email. And then, but let me just be very, very frank and very, very clear. This is the channel of coming together as a community, as a nation, as people who really want to talk about their mental illness, what they're going through, maybe what their kids are going through. They can see the patterns from what they went through and now their kids are going through it. Believe me, I'm here to help. I am a voice, just one, but I'm here to offer, and it doesn't cost you anything. I'm not trying to get you to buy anything. I'm not promoting anything, not doing any ads. I'm just here to listen. I'm here to give advice. You can take it for what it is. I'm just one person who's experienced over the last basically 40 years of my life mental illness, and how I have been able to still wake up every day and not want to harm myself, because there was times where I wanted to. And that's something that we as a nation need to talk more about as well. Because of mental illness, that's the reason why we have so many high numbers with suicide. And it goes hand in hand. People don't just want to kill themselves because it's cool. No. People want to kill themselves because they're suffering and they feel like they're alone. But you're not alone. Even if you've lost your parents, like I have, and you've lost family members and friends, and everything's coming down, when it rains, it pours. That's the time to reach out and talk. You have to talk about it. And I talk a little bit in one of my other videos. You guys go check it out. But I talk about, the steps that you take. You find out the source. Try to trigger where and when it started. Write it down. Journal. Journaling is a big key about recovering and coping with your mental illness. Also, I go into a full detail with, just some of the other things, how it affects your relationships in the future. And then as an adult child, how it affects your relationship with your parents and the people that caused the abuse. How do you go through those What do you do? That sort of thing. And that's basically, what we're going to be talking about. And there's going to be not just talk about all the bad, there's also talk about the good of having hope, having, feeling like yourself again, feeling like I can overcome this, staying sober. That was one of my biggest, things that I finally, was able to, with a lot of growing and restrictions, that I had to take a step back and look that this was making me worse than better. It didn't help. It numbed. It was just a Band-Aid. And that's what alcohol was for me. So, saying that, staying away from the environments that would draw you into reckless behavior. I haven't done that in years. And I'm so thankful that I quit doing that. I live a very simple life. And if I post something on Facebook, it's probably, something encouraging and motivating, or it's a picture of, Emmy, my baby puppy, or it's pictures of my grandbabies, which I have 2 beautiful granddaughters, and I'm so blessed. It's a love like you've never known that could exist within you. You love your children, and that is deep, deep love. That doesn't go away. But when you have grandbabies, oh my gosh, it is such a high of just, I never knew that type of love could exist inside of me for these 2 human beings. And I love them, so much, and want the very, very best for them. And I'm so proud of my son and my daughter-in-law, because they are great parents, and they're great to each other. They're good husband and wife to one another. And they talk about their feelings and their emotions and what they've gone through. And my daughter-in-law, she will be joining me on my YouTube channel a few times, and may have to go over there because she does have 2 little ones. But she has a lot to bring to the table, because she's had to go through a lot in her young life. And now she is living her best life because she caught her awareness young. And now she is living her best life. And she still has a lot of years left to live her best life. But she has been the one person that has helped my son grow up and become a man. And I say that in all confidence, because he definitely is very masculine, very manly. But the maturity was instilled in him after marriage. So it took marriage and supporting a wife and children coming along for him to develop a mature adult of being what a real man is supposed to be. So the immaturity, I don't see that anymore with him. I see successful, young father, husband, hard worker. He's a very loving son. He loves on me more now, than he did with those adolescent years where it was like, "Oh, mom, don't kiss me, don't touch me." He respects that part of it, and he wants the very best for me, and he knows when I'm not at my best, then he wants me to keep moving forward. And there's one thing that he said to me that really hit home in a positive way. He said, "Mom," he said, "I've never known anybody to go through as much as you have gone through in your life and to bounce back every single time and never once let it keep you down. You may have been torn down. You may have been at the bottom, but you didn't stay there." And he said, "I'm so proud of you." And it was refreshing to hear your own son, who you've had, struggling relationship with when he was younger. And we had our struggles like any mom and son does. But it helped because he started recognizing his own mental illness, his own mental problems. And he knew that he didn't want to go down the road of drugs and alcohol and the bars and, the women and being wild and all like that. And so when he married young, he had a family, and he knew that that was the best road for him. And it is. And it's challenging for them. They're young parents, they have toddlers. And it's challenging. He sometimes says, "Mom, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do, but she's driving me nuts." And he's talking about my granddaughter who's almost 3. So, but, we giggle about it now. So, but it's one thing to, to come together and talk about the things that need to be said. And the one thing I have done with my children now that they are adults is I've given them their space. So when they are ready to come to me and talk to me about whatever situation and circumstances are currently happening or has happened in the past, that it's their choice to talk to me, come to me about it. I'm never going to push them. "You got to talk to me. You got to talk to me. You got to talk to me. We got to talk this out. We got to work this out," like in a hurry, like it's, that takes time. And when your children have been affected by you as a parent who made bad decisions and it affected your children, just like my parents made bad decisions and it affected me, I've made bad decisions and it affected my children. And now that they're adults, they want answers. They want clarity. They want to know why. I let them come to me, and then we have talks and we work through it. Because I'm not perfect. We, as people, as human beings, are not perfect. There's no perfect parents out there. There's no perfect answer to tell your child. You just give the best answers you can. You give them the attention, the love. I mean, for many years when they were young, I was very hovering constantly. It was nothing. It was just about my children. And then it wasn't. I got to the point where I neglected that attention towards them and I put it on me. I became very selfish and I made bad decisions. And it didn't make it right. But now, for those bad decisions, I have forgiven myself. My children have forgiven me. And we now have different relationships because of it. But going through it and still talking about it, it's still a process. It's still part of all of our journeys, you know. But I'm there for them. They video chat or call, or I go over there, or whatever the case may be. I have one that lives, in Arizona. And, she's aware. Mom's here, And it's not, I'm not any better than anybody else out there. Believe me, I've made my big share of mistakes. More mistakes than I did good. And I'm not blaming anybody but myself. I'm not blaming my parents. I don't blame anybody but myself because, I do believe that God gave us free will. Free will. So we have choices. We wake up in the morning and we make a choice. Are we going to put our needs above our children? Do we even have that thought cross our mind that day? Or is it, oh, I got to go talk to this person and I've got to work and I've got to, go get my, my hair done, my nails done. I got to go shopping. I got to buy an outfit for, a date. I mean, I was single for years. That's all I was thinking about was me. And that's the raw truth that I'm sharing with you. I neglected my children and their needs and their wants and desires and hopes and dreams because all I wanted to do was go out and party and date. And then when I got into relationships, they weren't the best. They always start out good. And I think, oh, well, maybe, maybe this one will turn out good. Maybe it won't. But then I think, hey, one thing I won't ever give up on is love. I love people. I've always loved people. Human beings, mankind, it's just always been, I've always loved people. That's why I was in, the industry, the wellness industry for so many years is because I love people. I love helping people. I love healing bodies, finding where the pain starts. Mastering a skill, just like I mastered tennis. I mastered massage, And for many years, I thought, oh man, I got this motherhood thing down to a T. But then I had shifts, bad patterns in my life as they got older. And it took years to get back on track with them. Years. And we still have our struggles. It's no picnic. And when your kids become grown adults, it doesn't mean that you're going to get your shot and you're automatically going to get forgiven for all the shit you put them through. Because that's not always the case. And it's not always, what will happen. But whenever you admit the truth to your kids and come to them and say, look, I was a really shitty parent for many years. I was selfish, self-absorbed, cared more about going out and partying and dating and, and a boyfriend and putting them above you. And it was wrong of me. And I'm so sorry. That kind of apology, I am glad I got it from my mom. My dad apologized in different ways. He would say little things like, oh, Sunshine, I'm sorry if I ever hurt you in any way with my bad mistakes. And then he would say, we all make mistakes. That's why I don't judge you when you do. He always would say, I'm glad you come to me and able to talk to me about what's going on because I want to be here for you. My dad had a big turning point when I became a mom. It was huge for him. I was his last child. He had 7. We were a blended family. And then Jennifer and I were the only ones that were biologically, had the same parents. So I only have one actual blood sibling. The rest were half adopted. So, and I have right now currently, I have fairly good relationships with siblings, but then a few siblings I don't have a relationship with at all. And it saddens me, and I still long for that because we don't have our parents anymore. We lost my dad first, suddenly. Then 7 months and 1 day later, we lost my mom. And I did not get a chance to say goodbye to either one of them. And that was the hardest part of grief, is not being able to say goodbye when they suddenly just die and you get a phone call. And it's devastating, no matter how old you are. I mean, I can't even imagine as a child. But I will have a guest on, and he will tell you what he went through losing his father at the age of 13 and how it changed him and changed his siblings. I can't imagine losing my dad that young. I was so grateful to have him for 44 years of my life. I could call him and talk about anything and everything. And he would always just give me the most loving, positive advice. And some of the advice was kind of silly, but some of it was really, really good. We had a different relationship than the relationship I had with my mother. My mother was very ill in the end. She had several strokes, and then she died from, I guess, the fourth one. But I wasn't in her life for the last few years. So I just got I got a phone call. I hadn't seen her in probably 2.5 years. And I got a phone call that she passed. So the last time I saw her was in her casket. She didn't look the same. It's very hard to adjust your life to where when every morning you're having coffee and you're thinking about, oh my gosh, I got to tell. And then you pick up your phone to call your dad, but you forgot that he's dead, that he died. That's hard. That's really hard. Or that one of your grandchildren is born and you're so excited, but they're not here. And I believe that, their love, is here, right here. And I know that they love their grandchildren very much, even the ones they didn't get to meet. I know that they're, I do believe myself personally, I believe that they are in heaven. Probably not together, but I'm sure that they're friendly to each other. They have to be there in heaven. I don't know how much bigger of a house my dad got than my mom. I joke around about that a lot, but, life's full of change. Change is inevitable. Change always is happening. Just like breathing in and out. Change is always happening. It's how we handle the change, how we adapt. Are we living in our past? Are we living for the moment? Are we living strictly for the future? How are we living? What are our patterns? It all goes back to mental health, how our thought process works, our subconscious, why we are wired the way we are. These are all the topics, and sharing more about my own personal journey. And I want to help. So if you want my help, I'm here to listen. Thank you guys for tuning in and staying with me this long. You certainly didn't have to. I appreciate it, and much love, much more videos to come. And we will dive in each time, little subjects on how to manage, to cope with what you're going through in your personal, professional, anything you would like to speak up about. This is an open floor kind of, where we can talk and discuss together a topic that, you're concerned about and may need to reach out. I'm just now putting the YouTube channel together, so you have to give me a little bit of time, but I will have links below that will have all the information you need, hotlines for anything, resources. If you want to find out what resources you can get for free, if you do not have health insurance, and especially if your health insurance doesn't cover mental illness, where you can go for free in your local, area, and how there are programs out there. I go to group therapy. I go to online therapy that's more convenient. And I have very close people in my life that are wise, that I go to seek out the answers I need. So I'm very fortunate that I still have that. But this, me giving back to people like myself who have struggled with their mental illness, this is also my therapy. So I want to say thank you again. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful evening. And I hope that you join me on this journey and we can talk about it together and help each other out. Until next time, this is The Real Talk with Sunshine-ANDIE at Boss Girl Studios. And we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.